Hey everyone, it's Colin. So a lot of people are really into these Final Fantasy games. So much so that it feels like there's a new one coming out every few years. But to be honest with you, I've never played one before. But I decided today was the day that was gonna change. The only problem is I don't exactly know where to start. There's like 16 of them at this point, or at least 16 mainline titles. And these range all the way back to the NES. But one in particular is normally held in pretty high regard, and that's Final Fantasy VII. That's the one I'm gonna be playing today, but the remake of it. This game's fucking awesome! Final Fantasy VII is a must-play in my opinion, especially so if you like deep stories, long runtimes, and huge character development. Throughout this video, I'm going to touch on a lot of the good aspects of the game and also some of the bad. And at the end, I'll be getting to some pretty deep story points. And those will include some spoilerish content, so if you guys haven't played or are sensitive to that, I'll make sure to give you guys a warning. Well, that probably is the deepest and most lengthy part of this review though, so watch with your own discretion. The first thing I want to touch on is going to be the game's combat. So the main character you'll be playing as throughout this entire game is the iconic Cloudstrife. Cloud is an absolute unit on the battlefield, wielding a buster sword. You feel this giant sword's power cutting through every single swing you take on every single enemy you encounter. You can tell Cloud was definitely the best of his class as a soldier. Now, I'm not a big fan of turn-based combat like the original Final Fantasy VII or many other games in the franchise, or even some of the Pokemon games, but they did make a very important change to this combat, and now it's more action-based with some turn-based style elements thrown in there. And holy shit is it fun. I just love the ability to dodge in real time and kind of plan out your strikes without a timer or a routine base. It just makes the game a lot more engaging and fast-paced overall. And also in some later fights of the game, it does bring a lot of challenge because there's a lot going on. You'll have a command bar which lets you use some abilities, spells, items, summons, limit abilities, all sorts of things. You'll also have a meter which corresponds with that command list, which lets you do certain attacks or abilities based on how much meter they require. For example, Cloud's abilities such as the Braver attack fill it with so much sense of power that it sometimes can one-shot specific enemies. I also forgot to mention that a lot of the times in a lot of these battles, you'll have friends alongside you fighting as well. Big ones are probably Tifa and Barrett. They also have their dedicated meters, who also have their own abilities that you also have to manage while you're fighting as one of the three characters. And yeah, you do have to pay pretty close attention to make sure these characters get healed or using their abilities to maximize the most damage you can. And there's a lot more to these, but overall I just think it gives the game a lot faster and better of a flow and just helps make it an extremely amount more engaging, at least for me and some probably other new players alike. And yes, I know that'll probably piss quite a few people off, but I do think it helps some people in this newer generation experience these games better. Now, going away from the combat side of things, I do want to talk about the side content that this game has to offer. And here I will say this is probably one of the weaker points in the game, in my opinion. While I wouldn't say the content is bad or boring even, it just tends to lack a little bit of variety on certain aspects. Personally, I wasn't a big fan of the ones that you would just kind of go on a fetch quest to fight some random enemy and bring data or some sort of materia back to someone, but instead liked where you're helping out in a certain village, or like when you're helping the teacher find her students, that sort of thing. Those side quests in specific helped build a lot of world immersion for me and helped build some character to Cloud, Tifa, or Aerith based on how you're interacting with people. But it also kind of feels like these were forced on the player at times, especially since if you left to go to another main mission, all the quests that you hadn't complete at that time would automatically be lost and you couldn't finish them at a later point, which sometimes you can get quite a few side missions. Like I would say in Sector 7, that's not a big issue, but especially during kind of that last big hurrah in the game, they kind of overboard you and you're really excited and want to get into that big Shinra battle that you really don't want to stop that pace to help everyone in the town, and you just won't be able to unless you do it right then. And sometimes they just feel like a sort of padding or make the game feel even more linear, which isn't always a bad thing, but in this case it added more bloat to the story. But then again, some of them did the exact opposite, encouraging you to explore, walk around these sectors to get to know them better. So it was really just a toss-up, and I'm excited to see what they do further with this in the upcoming games. Also, I kind of want to just bring up how the actual sectors felt in the game. These are kind of like your hub worlds. Sector 7, the first one you're in after that very first mission, it's pretty much exactly what you'd expect a place called the slums to look like. It is the hometown of our Avalanche strike team, so you do start to build a liking of the place when it comes to the bar that I think Barrett owns and also that Tifa bartends at, or even the inn that you stay in and have a room that also acts as Tifa's kind of new home. Doing all the side quests in this sector makes you feel very recognized by the end of them all, because all the residents will start to grow a liking for you and want to put more jobs on you, which also helps you grow a sort of attachment to this sector in particular. Next up we have Sector 5, which you first come into after you fell through the roof and you meet Aerith for the second time. You'll find that this sector is a lot more lively and well off. Not to mention Aerith's house just captures a lot more lively feel because of all the flowers and plants around it. But not a lot happens in this district besides, you know, you meeting Aerith and those particularly good side quests and maybe that Turk you fought kind of off to the side, or even in that church initially. And Sector 6 being kind of the last one is the most memorable because this is our whole market town. It's basically what a Final Fantasy VII version of Las Vegas would feel and look like. And honestly, the sector had me exploring quite extensively and just caught the most interest in me. And you spend probably a majority of the story time in this sector, so I gotta give it bonus points for that as well. Now, like I said, time to get to the heavy hitting portion, the story, right? And yeah, this will contain some spoilers. I'm mainly gonna go over character development and why Cloud is so special in particular, because goddamn is this story something else. But like I mentioned, first off we get introduced to our main character, Cloudstrife. The reveal is badass. I wouldn't have expected anything less, but you'll soon find out that you're hired help helping the clan known as Avalanche, a rebellion in this world acting out against Shinra Electric Power Company, aka the bad guys in this world. Here's where you'll find out that Cloud is an ex-soldier. You also learn that Cloud was a first-class soldier, which is the highest rank you can achieve in the program. Now, you never exactly learn why Cloud left soldier in specific. You can definitely tell it's because he didn't agree with their methods. Now, as I mentioned, you also meet all the other members of Avalanche, which consists of Biggs, Wedge, Jesse, Barrett, and also Tifa, but that's later. But I mainly want to focus on those first 4 right now. Probably the big one for me here is Jesse. They go out of their way to give you so much backstory on Jesse, developing this relationship with her and Cloud. And it really just helps make you feel connected to the character. You actually end up going to Jesse's home and learning that the reason she's fighting for Avalanche is because her dad was an ex-Shinra employee and got sick based off the stuff they were doing there. And now he's bedridden in a coma. Who knows if he'll wake up. She's also very much secretive about it, to the point her own mom doesn't even know, thinking Jesse's pursuing some sort of acting career. All of this leads up to a devastating battle in Sector 7 where the plate falls on the entire town, destroying it all, and Jesse goes down with it. And this made it super impactful because Jesse literally died in Cloud's arms after you learned everything about it, and gives you just more reason to keep fighting and helping out Avalanche for no basically additional fee. Almost causes and influences Cloud to become a member of Avalanche himself. Cloud is like the definition of nonchalant. He's so dismissive and it really builds more and more with his badass nature. What I personally like a lot about Cloud is that going into the game, you have no reason to really care about these members of Avalanche. Well, outside of Tifa, but we'll get to that in a second. So when you're first put in his shoes, you're just trying to get paid out for a job you're doing. But as the story goes on and you get to spend more times with these members, you take in all this information for the first time, so does Cloud. And this not only strengthens your bonds with the characters for Cloud, but also for you as the player. So when you're hearing Jesse's stories told to Cloud at the same time as the player, it just helps you feel more and more sync with the character as you're building that attachment and that bond. And it's the same exact bond that Cloud is also forming in that moment. And this is something consistent throughout the entire game. From the first time you meet Aerith, or even when you banter with Barrett, with Cloud in the early stages of the game making it clear he's only doing this for money. But yet at the end of the game, after they've been through everything together, making a joke towards it when Barrett asks if he's on board for something, Cloud saying he'll do it for the right price, in a snarky or sarcastic way. And this brings a lot more warmth to Cloud as a character, and also helps you relate to Cloud as you build a stronger connection around this world. But as this rule goes, Tifa and Sephiroth are kind of the only exceptions to it. When you first get into Sector 7, it is clear that Cloud and Tifa have known each other. Cloud is almost so cold now that he looks to her as pretty much a stranger. I mean, you get elements sprinkled in of him having some sort of care or affection for her that he just doesn't anyone else. But especially that next day, doing side missions alongside her really helps build their connection with each other, and probably honestly got me on the same page as well. I would say probably the biggest example of this is when Cloud had a flashback, him and Tifa on the water tower in his hometown. This was all the way back when Cloud was either 13 or 14, telling Tifa that he was going away into the soldier program and wouldn't be back. And here you learn that Cloud made a promise to keep Tifa safe. Things like this help bring Cloud and Tifa's friendship back to life, and also help the player form a connection with her as well. Now Sephiroth is on like the opposite end of that. He's so mysterious throughout the whole entire game and has such an evil aura around him. Like, you can tell this dude's demeanor is just to be devilishly evil. And Cloud obviously hates him and has some sort of PTSD solely brought to light by this character. And if I remember this correctly, Cloud kind of briefly brings up how he killed Sephiroth for his mother. And that personally made me super curious, because you know there's a deep history behind these two characters and why is Cloud having these hallucinations or flashbacks. But you really never learn more until they just tell you later in the second game, Rebirth. So while you as the player don't necessarily have a hatred for him, you can still tell that he's evil all the way up until that final act. You really see that man's dark side. Like, you can just tell Sephiroth is a merciless man, and you as a player just want to stop him. This relationship between him and Cloud is deepened a lot more in the second game, especially during that opening sequence. That's a topic for another video. Like I was saying, he pretty much straight up just stabs Barrett, killing him for a second, and you're like, the guy who has a kid just died, and his kid will grow up without a father. Like, that's screwed up. And like, that caught me off guard and hit hard. Like I said, Barrett was only dead for a second there, and that action was undone by Whispers. These guys played a huge role throughout the entire game. The Whispers were always at super important events, and you never really knew what they were or what their purpose was until the very end of the game. They're pretty much just watchers of fate. They make sure that the right thing happens no matter what. So in this case, Barrett wasn't supposed to die, so they made it so he didn't die. Pretty much just always correcting events. In this scenario, they are very favorable towards our crew several times throughout this game. And I will say this explanation was very nice, as you pretty much play through the whole entire campaign and learn at the very end what they do. Because they're like really different than anything else in this world, and you never really fight them until that final sequence. Now, Final Fantasy VII Remake is an excellent game. It's wonderful and has a really engaging story. I would say the grab and appeal to this game is the story. I haven't really played anything like this before, with stories of games playing back to back to back, and I'm really excited to finish the second installation and really looking forward to the third one that comes out in the future. Like I said, I'm really glad they chose to do a remake of this game and take it in a direction that not a lot of us expected. And if you want to talk more about specifics, bring it up in my comments section. I'm always looking, but also try not to spoil too much things, because I haven't played the original Final Fantasy VII, and I went into this blind and I still don't know what's happening in the second one really, besides like the first quarter of it maybe, and that third act at all. But also let me know if you want me to address Rebirth in a future video, because I'd probably love to talk about it. So far, that game's awesome. Yeah, that's all I really got about this. If you did enjoy, I'd appreciate you guys leave a subscribe, and yeah, comment or like. It just helps me grow as a channel. If you want to see me play through these games, I stream over on Twitch at twitch.tv/itscontrast with a Z. I'll link it down in the description below. Yeah, that's all I really got for you guys. Thank you for checking out the video, like I said. And yeah, this has been the Pixel Critic. Multiple, like imagine a game series like that, where it's on multiple different platforms. And you need to have those multiple different platforms.